Okay, it is time for the Blitzcrank video. So, this is the A to Z mini rework and my thoughts of like champions in the game. We are on Blitzcrank, the great Steam Golem. And right off the bat, this is all a lie. This is true. This is the only thing that's true. This is a lie. I would put this like here, not here. Because yes, he does hook, but his E is basically an auto attack, so I guess it can be considered both. He punches quite a bit, surprisingly enough, so I would still put this over here. And then with his ult, yes, it is a good ability to prevent people from doing anything, but at the same time, it allows him to punch you more. And he will punch you a lot if he's out of abilities, because all of his abilities are pretty big cooldowns for the most part, at early levels anyway. So he will punch you. So I think that this should be a bit more over. 2. This damage should definitely be a bare minimum of 2. Yeah, the rest of this, okay, I kind of agree with this mobility thing, but at the same time, I don't. Because he actually has an ability that flat out increases his mobility. Now, yes, it slows him for half the time as well, but whoop-de-ding-dong, he still gets a big increase of mobility. So I guess I can accept the fact that it's only 1, but at the same time, I still kind of think it should be 2. His damage, without a sliver of a doubt, should be 2. Literally, 2 of his abilities scale 100% with AP and AD. Okay, well, one scales 100% with AD, and one scales 100% with AP. That is stupid. This is a support that is capable of one-shotting you. That is stupid. And I mean a legit support. Now, yes, he usually has to build a bit more AP to be able to one-shot, but he still does a good amount of damage. I agree with the difficulty being 1. Which is one of the big things that I hate about difficulty 1 champions, which is the fact that they're so simple that they have very little counterplay on both regards. You can only counterplay them to a certain extent, and they can only counterplay you to a certain extent. Okay. Blitzcrank is an enormous, near indestructible automation from Zon. Really? Near indestructible. Really now. Originally built to dispose of hazardous waste, however, he found his primary purpose to restricting and modified his own form to better serve the fragile people of the Sump. The Sump. Blitzcrank selflessly uses his strength and durability to protect others, extending a helpful metal fist or burst of energy to subdue any troublemaker. Okay. So when it comes to Blitzcrank, I have a full mini rework for him. It's basically a rework, but it's also sort of a mini rework at the same time because it's really not that huge. It is a rework to all of his abilities, but at the same time, it's still. So I'm going to go over all of his abilities first, and then I'm going to say the rework. So first is Mana Barrier. When Blitzcrank's life is brought below 20% health, he activates Mana Barrier. This creates a mana shield equal to 50% of his mana for 10 seconds. Mana Barrier can only occur once every 90 seconds. His Q, Rocket Grab. Blitzcrank fires his right hand to grab an opponent on its path, dealing damage and dragging it back to him. Overdrive. Blitzcrank supercharges himself to dramatically increase movement and attack speed. He is temporarily slowed after the effect ends. Power Fist. Blitzcrank charges up his fist to make his next attack deal double damage and pop his target up in the air. Static Field. Passively causes lightning bolts to damage a nearby enemy. Additionally, Blitzcrank can activate this ability to damage nearby enemies and silence them for 0.5 seconds. But doing so removes the passive lightning until Static Field becomes available again. Okay. Now, his kit is very simple. It's basically, you hit your W, you run towards a person, you Q them with your Q, obviously, you grab them with your Q, and then you hit them with your E, knock them up, and then you use your ult, and now they have been CC'd majorly, and have had no capable way of doing anything about it except for dodge the Q. But he can also do something where he can flash on top of you and then do his E and then hook you at point blank just to keep you there even longer and then alt. Or you could alt, then do the cook, and then do the E. It's basically you just CC the champion. Like, yeah, you have a whole lot of different combos, but the primary combo is either Q or W, and then whatever the heck the other one is, and then your E, and then alt. Like, you can use your W to run towards them and then hit Q, or you can do your Q, then WE, so that you have faster attack speed, plus, you know, you knock them up faster and everything, and then your alt, and then you can just start punching them because you still have the bonus attack speed from your W. Which is another reason why AD Blitzcrank is stupid, because his E scales 100% with AD, and he gets the bonus attack speed from his W. And then his Q and alt scale with ability power. His Q specifically scales 100%, so that does a ridiculous amount of damage. Okay. Now, one, I think that Blitzcrank definitely needs, like, an update. Like, he just looks really stupid. He really, really just looks really stupid. Now, the mini rework kind of messes mostly, like, the things that are completely different would be his passive and his alt. Those are two things that I just think are very dumb. Well, sort of. So, his passive, instead of being Mana Barrier, which is just like shield he gets at low HP, instead it'll be something called Crank. Original name, Blitzcrank, passive Crank. So, what this will be is it will kind of like for the one Orianna, how she has like the crank inside of her back. Basically, that's going to add a crank on him. It's going to add quite a few, about 4 in total. It should. So, or 3. So basically, this is a kind of complicated to where you will not even realize that it's helping you or what it's doing, but it will be doing it. It's something that you don't even need to fully understand, and you can use it, which is why I want him, because I do want Blitzcrank to like stay a 1 difficulty person. I just want to add some counterplay and make him a wee bit better, and yeah. So, and like the way I see that is because I do increase the difficulty from like how I want his kit to work, but I do want it to leave to be like it still feels like Blitzcrank and it still is Blitzcrank, but at the same time it's just a little bit harder, and you don't need to understand what you're doing, but you can be doing it, or you can understand what you're doing and you'll do it even better. So his alt is now Crank, where basically if he uses an ability, the crank will start to move. Now, each one of his abilities now, except for his alt, will have a charge time, and then the actual one of the ability activates. The charge time, and when the ability activates, and the cooldown, all have to do with his passive. So it's quite a bit in one passive. It's probably the thing that's going to take the longest to talk about with him. So let's say he uses his Q to hook someone, and the cooldown is 16 seconds at level 1. Now, because he's level 1, his other 2 abilities haven't even been unlocked yet, so technically they are not on cooldown, nor are they being used. Because of this, Crank will speed up the time that his hook was on cooldown, meaning that instead of being 16 seconds, it'll lower it to like 13 or 12. So it's just a little bit, but it's just there. Now, let's say you're level 2 and you have your Q and your W. So you activate your Q and you hook someone, and then you activate your W. Now, because both of these abilities are on cooldown, the cranks will go a little bit slower, meaning that both abilities, let's say your W is on a 10-second cooldown, your Q is on a 16-second, what it'll do, it'll cause both of them to be lowered only a little bit. Such as your Q will be lowered to a 14-second cooldown, and your W will be lowered to a 9-second cooldown. Now, let's say you're level 3, and you use your Q, W, and E. This will have a slightly different reaction. Whatever the ability that you first used will be on a very slightly lowered cooldown, or just a lowered cooldown. This ability you second used will be on its original cooldown, and the last ability you used will have a larger cooldown. So as I said, 16 seconds Q, 10 seconds W, and we'll go 13 seconds E. What this will do, now these are just random times, they're not actually what the time frame will be. What this will do is it'll cause his Q to go at 14 seconds. His W will stay at 10 seconds, and his E will go to 14 seconds. It'll go up one. So that's just like how that will work. But that's only when it comes to cooldowns. Now, I'm going to go over, before I go over the rest of his passive, I'm going to go over his Q, W, and E. So, when it comes to his Q, instead of just bringing an immediate hook, it'll be something like a Vi Q, where he will need to charge it, which is why I said the ability gets charging time, and then he will activate it. And depending on how high it's charged, will decide both damage and range that it has. Meaning you won't be able to just be in range, hit the Q, and then yank someone to you, because I think that his Q is his hook is the strongest hook in the game and should not be as strong as it is. And this is a way of kind of, making it more difficult. Such as he will have to charge it up to, like, let's say it's max charge at 4 seconds, like Vi's. And then at the 4 seconds, it hits both max range and does whatever damage it is. So, let's say you use your Q and neither of your other... Okay, well now I'm going to actually go with what I was saying earlier. I'm going to go back to his passive, even though I didn't go over his other abilities. It's just, yeah. So... With his Q, let's say he uses his Q and he's level 3. And he's holding in the Q because he needs to charge it. Now, let's say his W is off cooldown and so is his E. This will cause the charge time, instead of being, let's say it's at a base of 5 seconds. Instead of being 5 seconds, it will be 4 seconds. It'll go down 1 because 3 seconds, because both of his abilities are not being charged. Neither are they on cooldown. So, but let's say he's using his Q and his W is on cooldown, but his E is not. Instead, it'll only be lowered to, 5 seconds instead, or 4 seconds instead of the 3 seconds, or whatever the heck. Yeah, let's say like the cooldown is 5 seconds, and it'll be lowered down to 4 seconds instead of 3 seconds, which is what it would be lowered to if his Q had both his, both his W and his E is off a cooldown. Now, let's say he's trying to charge his Q and both his W and his E are on cooldown. This will actually increase the time from the 5 seconds to 6 seconds. So because of this, you want to be careful of what ability you use in what order, because if you end up like using your Q first, then you hit your W, and then you're trying to use your E, which, like as I said, each ability charges, it'll charge the slowest, so it's just going to activate later on, which could be more difficult for you. So, yeah, like this is something though that could like really benefit you or curse you without you really knowing. Well, not really curse. It's really, it barely increases any cooldown ever. It's only by like 1. Now, let's say, because you can charge multiple abilities at once, let's say you hit your E and your Q at your same time, and your W is, whatever the heck it's called, it's not on cooldown, and it's like ready, but you're not using it. And when your W and E charge, you don't need to hold in the buttons. The only one you need to hold in for is your Q, because your Q will also be like Vi's, where it will slow you while you're doing it. Let's say both your E and your Q are charging. What this will do is and your W is not on cooldown, it will keep each of the time frames either the same, or maybe it will lower one of them, whatever one you use first, by 1 second. So let's say your E is on a 3 second or 5 second charge time, and so is your Q. And then you use your E, and then you use your Q, and you don't use your W. it'll keep your Q on a 5-second charge time, but it will change your E to a 4-second charge time. Now, let's say your W, though, you do have on cooldown. That will make so your E will stay on its cooldown, or have its regular charge time, and so will your Q, so it won't have any negative effect. But let's say you have both your E, Q, and W all charging simultaneously. What this will do is it will cause whatever ability you use first to have a very slightly decreased time. Let's say it's your E, so it will go down to 4 seconds. The ability you use second will have its regular time frame, and then the ability you use last will have a 1 second more time frame. So it's only like, yes, it is a debuff, but at the same time it is a buff. And it is more of a buff than it is a debuff, depending on how you use your abilities. If you hit all your abilities at once, it's a bit of a debuff. But if you use your abilities in a smart way, it's a bit of a buff. But you still can do Blitzcrank things and like hook people and keep people locked up, even with this. So, as you know, with your Q, as I just said, it needs to charge for however long, and then you can hook people based and does both damage and distance based on how long you charge. And while you're charging, you are slowed, just like VIQ. It is literally VIQ, but in hook form, because it even knocks you up like VIQ. Okay, let's move on to his W. Okay, with his W, I kind of fused his current W and his current E into one ability. So what it does is that upon activating his W, it starts to charge. Now, you can actually use the ability immediately without it charging basically at all. But there will be only, like, there will be, technically it'll still be positive, but it will be more negative than anything else. Such as, when your W is charging, or your next auto attack, or upon activation of your W, your next auto attack will be your E, where it will knock up an enemy. But depending on how much you charge will depend on how long they are knocked up and the damage that knockup does. Such as, let's say and the charge is not depending on time, it's actually dependent on movement. Now, I know, as I just said, with his W, or with his passive, that makes no sense, because how can the charge, what's it called? How can the charge be a second shorter? Now, instead of being a second shorter, it'll be distance that you don't need to travel. Like, let's say his W, he activates his W here, and to get to max charge regularly, he'd have to be here. To get to max charge with his other abilities off cooldown, it'll only be here because of being faster. But if it takes longer, then instead of being here, you'll have to be way over here, which is off the screen. And because of that, like, there you go. It's just distance not traveled, or increased distance that you will need to travel. The reason this is so he doesn't just, like, activate the ability and then he uses his other ability and like your teammates stun them, so that you can just stand there and wait for the ability to charge. This is so that you actually need to at least click in other areas and run around them, I guess, at least, so that you can charge the ability. Plus, it also gives time, so that let's say you hook a person, but you don't want to, like, knock them up and have it only be like a 0.5 second knockup, which is what it will be with 0 charge. So you activate your W and you start to, like, run. But because of that, they flash away, and then you can't catch up to them, even with, like, the bonus movement speed. Let's just say that they flash, and then they just their ally helps them out by giving them a speed boost, and you can't catch up to them. This gives them time that even if they get hooked, they're not going to be immediately knocked up afterward. Now, yes, you can activate your W, like run at them, then activate your Q, charge your fist, land the hook, and then your W can be at max charge because of the distance you traveled, and then you can knock them up immediately afterward. But that will cause, like, as I said before, it will cause, like, your Q to be at the same cooldown, and your W will only charge, like, 1 second faster, or, well, 1 distance faster. 1, like, segment of distance, I guess. And then his E is kind of his current alt. As I said, like, the abilities are really changed, or really more of, like, his alt and his passive than anything else. Like, the other abilities are just kind of his current abilities, a bit different. So as I said, his E currently is just like the knockup, but that's what I kind of put into his W. So we're just going to go over to like his alt. So I actually kind of fused his current passive and his current alt, to be completely honest. So what it is that he activates his E, giving himself a shield. Now, this shield slowly charges. Now, when it comes to the shield, while it's charging, every second it'll zap an enemy around him, kind of like the passive on his current alt. With enemies that are zapped, that doesn't really decide the charge. It just kind of adds in a little bit bonus damage, plus it adds in a bit of a different effect. And the zap will prioritize champions. Now, this shield is, as I said, it's kind of like his passive, where it's just like a little shield. It's not based off of his mana like his passive is, but it's kind of like Scion E. But let's say he, upon losing the shield, meaning he just takes enough damage or the time runs out, a static shock will go all around him. Now, if this will do damage to everyone in like the cone around him, but if that target has been hit by lightning, it will also silence them. Meaning if it hit by one of like the second zaps, meaning that if they flash out at the range, though, it will not silence them because they will dodge the zap, but they'll dodge the burst of AoE around you, kind of like what this is currently. Like you'll just see like that little zap. This happens, that would have silenced that minion. And as I said, like the E, each second that it's charging, it will zap one person around him. And like I'm pretty sure like base, but this also has like a downside, because since the crank will cause the ability to like go faster, this also means that that's one less person zapped, so one less person that will be silenced. It will not be some giant AoE silence, it'll just be like only to those people that were zapped. Now, when it comes to like, but you can reactivate the shield even if it gets to its max charge. Now, you can try to be like a cheeky kind of person, and so that after it gets to its max charge, but the shield will still last for like longer after that. So you can actually wait and just kind of hold on to it and let it continue to keep zapping people, allowing your E to silence more people if you can like stay within their group that entire time. But that also means that if they start shooting you and you lose the shield, then it will go off right away. And yeah, then the AoE will still go off, and it will do the silence, but it will not be as big of a silence, because there will be a bit of a punishment if you're not the one activating it. And it will be the same thing if the time just naturally runs out. You need to be actually the one to activate the ability. It's not just going to be a bonus from just letting it sit there. And now you cannot reactivate your E if it is not at full charge. Meaning that if you activate your E in the first place and then they shoot you a lot and then like take out the shield and it wasn't at full charge, it will not do the burst of lightning around them. And the only damage it would have done is whoever got zapped the first few seconds that it went through. So, yeah. Now, his new alt is builds off of his current passive. Or what? No, not his current passive. His new passive. What it would be is called like multi-crank or something like that. Where for you and all allies around you, for all allies around you, you will fling a crank to them. Now, it won't be one of the cranks on your actual body. It'll just, like, you'll just give them a crank that will appear above them or something. And what this will do is that each time that they use an auto attack or an ability, it will cause your cranks to spin faster. Meaning that if you're in, like, the middle of a team fight, you can use your alt and then use all three of your abilities, and it will cause all of your abilities to both charge faster, have shorter cooldowns, even if all of them are on cooldown at the same time, because each of your allies are acting as bonus cranks that will lower your cooldowns. And it will also give each of your allies just like a little shield based off of either your max mana or your max HP, and it will also give you like a little shield as well. but it's only like a very little shield, like 5 to 10% of your max HP. Maybe theirs, but probably yours instead. Now this will be a pretty good team fight mechanic, but in like a solo fight, it's very useless. Such as if you, like, let's say you decided to go Blitzcrank mid. Now you can still do Blitzcrank mid, and you can activate his ult in your lane alone. But instead of being the most useful thing in the world, it will only cause you just to get like a shield. Now this shield will still be just like, it's going to be something that will help you out. Like it'll just be like having the summoner spell barrier, but nonetheless it won't be as effective. But let's say you take Blitzcrank mid, and late game happens, and then a team fight starts, and you activate your ult, and each one of your abilities do a ton of damage. So then you land the hook on one of their backline because you, for whatever reason, and then you just one-shot them because you're Blitzcrank mid, and you do a lot of damage. So I still want him to be able to do other things, but I also want him to be a bit more balanced and have more counterplay options, such as now you can dodge his Q easier because you can see it charging, you know when it's going to come, so on and so forth. When it comes to his E, he now needs to actually like zap you, so you know if you haven't been zapped, you're not going to be silenced, plus you can get out the range or target at his abilities. With his W, you know that he needs to move, so immobilizing him with like a root or just about anything, that even like a slow will technically slow down how fast he gets the stacks. So just like now there's a lot of counterplay options to him and for him as well, because now he can like decide how fast he wants to use his abilities depending on his cooldowns and everything for like the really good Blitzcranks, or he can just be like the Blitzcrank currently and just use all of his abilities at once and still lock you down in a CC chain, but at the same time his passive and everything will both be hurting him and maybe buffing him depending on how he uses his abilities. And like so on and so forth. So that is my thoughts with Blitzcrank. Let's go to his skins real fast because, God, he has a doozy of them. Rusty Blitzcrank. I don't really know when it comes to this one. I think that I wish that they added like a bit more, damage to his body. Now, like I can see that yes, he is pretty badly damaged, but it's basically this like a rust chroma. Stinking stepped on my mic cord. But it's basically like having a chroma to your base skin, which is a rust. Now, yeah, it's kind of unique, but at the same time, it would be better if it was like a bit different. Goalkeeper Blitzcrank, I don't like just because it's so insanely simple. I wish that like he had a lot more on him suggesting goalkeeper, or just like stupid themes, like maybe putting like a net over his face, or maybe painting like soccer ball patterns on his skin and his face, and like just used everywhere, like just something to add some uniqueness to it. I do like Boom Boom Blitzcrank. I don't really think it should be called Boom Boom, but besides that, I think that it does just like generally look pretty cool. Piltover Customs Blitzcrank. I love this one just because it actually like changes his feet into wheels and everything, and it really does just like change him a good amount. I hate this skin just as much as I love it, just because like whenever my friends, as we know from like my one friend going, we're not playing with Blitzcrank, just because it's definitely no Blitzcrank. And so yeah, but I do still like the skin too. Blitzcrank, I think that the Q animation needs to be stinking fixed because it's like impossible to see. It's just bad. It is like one of the few skins in the games that can actually improve the gameplay just because of like animations. It like this skin has been banned from like professional play because of that. Riot Blitzcrank. See, I wish that it was like the goalkeeper where it had like the giant riot symbol on him. Like, I know that he is just, like, supposed to be, like, the defender against riots and, like, so on and so forth, but I just wish that they had, like, the giant riot symbol on, like, some part of his body. And that's really all I cared about. I love this skin just because it's one of the battle boss. I don't think anything needs to be changed about it because of this reason. This skin just looks insanely cool. I don't really know why it's called Lancer Rogue, because these are basically just like robotic samurai, so I guess, but... And then this skin is also, it's literally just like the same thing, just different textures. I didn't really notice that they're literally just like the same thing, like the same thing. Huh. I guess it is like a mimicking skin, you can tell, because they're like doing the same thing, just an opposite formation and everything. But I do really like them, and I wish that they, this just further goes with what I was saying in like one of the My Thoughts of League of Legends, which I know I only like posted one of them because the other one is lost to the void of Twitch. But I wish that they did like a Lancer, Paragon, and Rogue of the champions that have like two. And by this I mean like champions that have like two different personalities type deal. Or like Annie, where she can be Lancer Paragon and then Tiberius can be Lancer Rogue. Or Gnar. Gnar in little form can be Lancer Paragon, and Gnar, Mega Gnar, can be Lancer Rogue. Like a skin that's two skins in one. And as I said this in like the My Thoughts, but I wish that they would take the price of one skin and the price of the other skin. They'd cut the price of the other skin in half, and then they'd combine the two prices. So it would be more expensive than just buying a single skin, even though it is a single skin. But at the same time, you're buying two skins, so it should be more expensive. You could sort of do something like that with Sejuani, making her Boar Lancer Zero and Lancer Rogue and making her Lancer Paragon. You can do it with Kayn. You can make his darkened form Lancer Rogue and make him Lancer Paragon when he goes into his blue form, and when he's in like the side form or in like the middle form, it can be like a crossbreed between the two. There were other like Nidalee. You could do it for Shyvana. You could also do it for who else? Nidalee, Shyvana, Kindred. I think I might have already said that. And like so on and so forth. Like you can just like for the champions that have like two different parts to them, that they're two champions in one. Really, you could sort of do it with Nunu as well. Like same thing with Sejuani there. And I wish that they also did it in like different ways, such as Rengar and Kha'Zix. Like Rengar's Lancer's Rogue, and the other one's Lancer Paragon, and Kha'Zix Lancer Paragon, or vice versa. So, Kayn, Jace can do it because he has the two different forms, and I think that would be it. But that has been Blitzcrank. If you agree with anything that I have said about Blitzcrank involving either, with his, like, the changes that I made to him, or maybe the skins that I just gave out, or the skin ideas that I just said, please leave a comment below. I'm fully for, constructive criticism. If you have anything to say about it, please do. I will get back to you as soon as possible. We can have a conversation about it and so on and so forth. If you happen to know anyone, like, personally that works at Riot Games or something, and you think that this skin idea or Blitzcrank idea is pretty good, please tell them of it. Tell them to contact me. I would love to get in touch with Riot Games Balance Department, very specifically, because I would love to insult all of them on their intelligence. Some of the dumbest ideas. Oh, let's buff Tryndamere. Let's buff Darius. It's not like they're broken already. Oh my god. Okay, so thank you all very much for watching this AtoZ video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you all next time as well. Thank you very much, and I bid you all adieu. Goodbye.